The Galactic Hub was abuzz with excitement and intrigue. A new virtual reality game had just hit the market and was taking the interstellar gaming community by storm. But this was no ordinary VR experience. It offered something unique and tantalizing, especially to the female humanoid population across the galaxy. The game was simply called Terran Temptations, and it allowed players to interact with stunningly lifelike simulations of human males from planet Earth. Ever since humanity had made first contact a decade prior, many alien races had become fascinated by these alluring bipedal creatures. Their exotic appearance, confidence, and roguish charm held an undeniable appeal. Kylar, a young Kytarian female with shimmering soft blue skin, tentatively slid the sleek VR visor over her luminous silver eyes. Her hearts raced with nervous anticipation as the device activated, plunging her into a lushly rendered virtual landscape. Towering conifers reminiscent of Earth's Pacific Northwest surrounded her, the damp, mossy scent of the forest tickling her olfactory receptors. As Kylar took a few hesitant steps forward, her HUD lit up with a notification. A new challenger had entered the arena. She instinctively crouched behind a fallen log, peering out cautiously. Heavy footfalls approached, crunching over the bed of pine needles. From the shadows of the tree line emerged a tall, well-built figure wearing rugged attire. Hiking boots, faded jeans, and a plaid flannel shirt rolled up to the elbows. He had chiseled features, warm brown eyes, and artfully tousled chestnut hair. The human stopped a few meters away and flashed Kylar a disarming smile. "Hey there," he said in a deep, resonant voice that sent shivers down her spine. "Didn't mean to startle you. The name's Garrett. I'm guessing this is your first time in the game?" Kylar slowly rose to her feet, brushing pine needles from her iridescent bodysuit. She nodded shyly, momentarily forgetting that he couldn't see the gesture through her visor. Yes, I'm new here," she stammered. "My name is Kylar. I'm from Kytaria Prime." "Pleased to meet you, Kylar," Garrett replied warmly, extending a large hand in greeting. "Welcome to Terran Temptations. Don't worry, I'll show you the ropes. This is a place to let your imagination run wild." He winked mischievously, and Kylar felt her cheeks flush a deeper shade of blue. There was something so magnetic about this simulated human. As their fingers brushed together, an electric tingle raced up her arm. Garrett grinned and jerked his head towards a winding trail leading deeper into the woods. "What do you say we go for a little hike and get to know each other better? I know a secluded spot with an amazing view of the mountains." Kylar's heart fluttered in her chest. She knew this was all just an incredibly advanced simulation, but her excitement and curiosity were rapidly overpowering her trepidation. The chance to interact with a human male, even a virtual one, was an opportunity she couldn't pass up. "I'd like that," she replied, feeling emboldened by his easy charm. Together they set off down the trail, chatting and laughing, the filtered sunlight dappling their skin. Kylar snuck covert glances at Garrett, admiring the way his muscles moved beneath his shirt, the roguish stubble lining his strong jaw, the mischievous glint in his eye when he caught her staring. As they walked, Garrett regaled her with tales of Earth, of its towering cities and wild places, its triumphs and struggles, the fortitude of its people. Kylar listened in rapt attention, feeling herself drawn in by his passion and zest for life. The more she learned about humanity, the more her fascination grew. After a steep climb, they emerged from the tree line into a small meadow carpeted with wildflowers. A weathered log cabin with a rustic porch stood at the far end, smoke curling invitingly from its stone chimney. Beyond it, sweeping vistas of saw-toothed mountains faded into the distance beneath a watercolor sky. "Wow," Kylar breathed, awestruck by the natural beauty. "This is incredible." "It certainly is," Garrett agreed, but his eyes were fixed intently on her. "Easily one of the most breathtaking sights I've ever seen." Kylar's skin prickled with heat as she met his smoldering gaze. She felt simultaneously flustered and exhilarated, intensely aware of his presence beside her. Part of her wanted nothing more than to throw caution to the wind and discover what other temptations this simulation had to offer. But another part of her hesitated, acutely conscious that no matter how real this all felt, Garrett was ultimately just a collection of codes and algorithms, a digital fantasy. Was it wrong to indulge in this? To let herself imagine, even for a moment, that someone as captivating as him could truly desire her? As if sensing her inner conflict, Garrett reached out and gently took her hand, his touch sending sparks racing across her skin. "Hey, it's okay," he murmured, his voice low and soothing. "I know this is all new to you. We can take things slow, get to know each other. I'm not going anywhere." He smiled softly and nodded towards the cabin. "What do you say we head inside and I'll fix us a drink? We can sit out on the porch and watch the sunset and see where the evening takes us from there." Kylar swallowed hard, her heart hammering against her ribcage. She knew she was standing on a precipice, teetering between caution and temptation. This human was so alluring, his presence so intoxicating. The promise of what lay ahead both thrilled and unnerved her. But the adventurous side of her won out in the end. When would she ever have another chance like this? To discover for herself what it was about human males that made them so irresistible. To indulge in a thrilling fantasy, free from risk or consequence. Squaring her shoulders, Kylar met Garrett's heated gaze with a newfound boldness shining in her silver eyes. Her lips curved in a coy smile as she replied, "Lead the way." As the rustic cabin door swung shut behind them, Kylar felt a thrill of anticipation mingle with nervousness flutter through her stomach. The interior was cozy and inviting, with a plush couch situated in front of a crackling fireplace, rough-hewn beams crisscrossing the ceiling, and an assortment of curious human relics adorning the walls. A pair of snowshoes, a weathered acoustic guitar, framed black and white photos of majestic earth landscapes. Garrett moved to the small kitchen area and began rummaging through the cupboards, retrieving a bottle filled with an amber liquid and 2 squat glasses. "I hope you like whiskey," he called over his shoulder with a grin. "It's a time-honored human tradition for warming the bones and loosening the tongue." Kylar perched gingerly on the edge of the sofa, watching him pour out 2 generous servings of the pungent spirit. Her senses felt heightened, every detail thrown into sharp relief. The play of firelight over Garrett's chiseled features, the subtle flex of his forearms as he worked, the earthy scent of the alcohol mingling with his own distinctly masculine aroma. Crossing the room, Garrett handed her one of the glasses before sinking down beside her, close enough that their thighs brushed. Kylar suppressed a shiver at the contact, heat blossoming beneath her skin. She took a tentative sip of the whiskey, feeling it burn a fiery path down her throat and spread tendrils of warmth through her chest. "So tell me, Kylar," Garrett began, his rich voice seeming to resonate through her very bones. "What made you decide to try out Terran Temptations? I'm guessing you've never been with a human male before?" She shook her head, suddenly feeling shy under the intensity of his gaze. "No, I haven't," she admitted, "but I've always been curious about your kind. The stories about human males are intriguing. I wanted to see for myself if they were true." Garrett's eyes sparkled with mischief and he leaned in closer, his breath ghosting across her cheek. "And? What's the verdict so far? Do I live up to the hype?" Kylar's pulse quickened, her heart's racing in tandem. This close, she could make out the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, the alluring curve of his lips. I'm not sure yet," she managed to reply, her voice emerging, breathier than she intended. "I think I need to collect more data before drawing any conclusions." He chuckled, a deep, resonant sound that seemed to vibrate through her very core. "Far be it from me to stand in the way of scientific inquiry," he teased. Slowly, giving her time to pull away, he reached out to brush a stray lock of hair behind her ear, his fingertips grazing her jaw and sending sparks skittering across her skin. "I'm more than happy to be your case study." Kylar shivered at his touch, heat pooling low in her belly. This all felt so real, so visceral. She knew Garrett was just a simulation, but her body didn't seem to care. It responded to him as if he were flesh and blood, a testament to the incredible sophistication of the technology. Emboldened by the whiskey and her own growing desire, Kylar let her fingers drift to Garrett's knee, feeling the firm muscles beneath the denim. She looked up at him from beneath lowered lashes, her lips curving in a coy smile. "I think I'd like that," she murmured. "For science, of course." "Of course," he agreed, his voice dropping an octave. "We'll have to be very thorough." The air between them practically crackled with tension as they held each other's gaze, pulses pounding, breath coming faster. Slowly, inexorably, they began to drift closer, as if drawn together by some irresistible force. Kylar's eyes fluttered shut in anticipation, her lips parting invitingly. Just as their lips were about to meet in a searing kiss, a chime sounded and Garrett abruptly froze in place, his expression going slack. Kyler jerked back in surprise, her heart still racing. Text flashed across her visor's HUD. Pause initiated by player, say, resume a program to continue. Flustered and a bit embarrassed by how fully she'd let herself get drawn into the simulation, Kyler took a shaky breath and tried to collect herself. It was so easy to forget that none of this was real, a testament to the incredible immersiveness of the Terran Temptations experience. She reached up and removed her visor, blinking as her eyes readjusted to the dim lighting of her private gaming pod. The stark white walls and minimalist furnishings were a far cry from the rustic, inviting ambiance of the virtual cabin. Kyler's skin still tingled with the ghost of Garrett's almost touch, and she could taste the smoky bite of the whiskey on her tongue. Shaking her head to clear it, she checked her chronometer and was shocked to discover that nearly 3 standard hours had passed since she'd first logged on. It had felt like mere minutes in the simulation. Kyler knew she should probably log off and attend to her duties, but the allure of the virtual world and her unfinished encounter with Garrett was too strong to resist. Biting her lower lip, Kyler hesitated only a moment before sliding the visor back over her eyes. "Resume program," she commanded, her voice quavering slightly with anticipation. The cabin materialized around her once more, and she found herself back on the couch, Garrett's face inches from her own, his eyes smoldering with desire. He blinked and smiled slowly, as if waking from a dream. "Now, where were we?" he murmured, his voice low and honeyed. Kyler swallowed hard, desire warring with uncertainty inside her. As badly as she wanted to melt into his embrace and discover the pleasures he offered, a niggling voice in the back of her mind cautioned her about losing herself too fully in a fantasy. Sensing her hesitation, Garrett sat back slightly, giving her space while still holding her gaze intently. "We don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with, Kyler," he assured her. "I want you to enjoy every moment of our time together, at whatever pace feels right to you." His consideration and attentiveness only made him more appealing, and Kyler felt herself falling further under his spell. How was it possible for a virtual being to be so perceptive, so in tune with her every desire? Throwing caution to the wind, she closed the distance between them and captured Garrett's lips with her own. The kiss started slow and sweet, but quickly ignited into something hungry and urgent. His strong hands slid around her waist, pulling her flush against the hard planes of his body as his tongue delved deep into her mouth. Kyler moaned softly, her own hands roaming greedily over Garrett's broad shoulders and muscular back. She'd never been kissed like this before, with such skill and passion. It left her aching and breathless, craving more. Garrett trailed scorching kisses along her jaw and down the column of her throat, pausing to nip at her racing pulse. "You taste even better than I imagined," he growled against her skin. "I want to explore every inch of you." His words sent molten heat rushing through Kyler's veins, and she arched wantonly into his touch, any lingering reservations evaporating like mist under the onslaught of pure sensation. She'd never wanted anyone or anything as badly as she wanted Garrett in that moment. Dimly, she registered the sound of fabric tearing as he deftly removed her bodysuit, baring her flushed skin to his heated gaze and questing hands. Kyler fumbled with the buttons of his shirt, desperate to feel his skin against her own. Just then another chime sounded and Garrett once again went still as a statue, the program freezing around them. Kyler let out a frustrated groan, desire throbbing almost painfully between her thighs. Text scrolled across her HUD. "Free trial period has ended. To continue your Terran Temptations experience, please subscribe or purchase credits." Breathing hard, Kyler stared at the message in disbelief. She'd been so consumed by her virtual tryst that she'd completely lost track of time. Now she'd have to decide if she was willing to spend her hard-earned credits to keep exploring her fantasies with Garrett. She bit her lip indecisively, torn between responsible pragmatism and the demands of her awakened desires. One thing was certain, her curiosity about humans had been more than satisfied. Now the question was whether she dared to fully unleash her newfound hunger and see just how deep this alien rabbit hole went. Kyler hesitated only a moment before authorizing the credit transfer and purchasing a subscription to Terran Temptations. She knew it was indulgent, But the promise of more time with Garrett and the chance to fully explore the depths of her awakened desires was too tempting to resist. As soon as the transaction cleared, the program unfroze and Garrett surged back to life, his hands and lips picking up right where they'd left off. Kyler gasped as he deftly removed the last scraps of her clothing, leaving her bare and vulnerable before him. "You are so beautiful," he murmured reverently, his heated gaze roaming over her quivering form. "I want to worship every inch of you." True to his word, Garrett proceeded to lavish attention on Kylar's body, his lips and tongue mapping every curve and hollow, setting her nerves ablaze with sensation. She writhed beneath him, lost in a haze of pleasure as he skillfully stoked her desire to a fever pitch. When she was teetering on the brink of madness, desperate for more, Garrett finally joined their bodies in one smooth thrust. Kyler cried out sharply, her nails raking down his sweat-slicked back as he filled and stretched her exquisitely. He set a deep, driving rhythm that had her seeing stars, hitting a spot inside her that she hadn't even known existed. Their virtual coupling was intense and explosive, rocking the very foundations of the cabin as they lost themselves in passion. Garrett took her to heights of pleasure she'd never before imagined, worshiping her body with single-minded intensity until she shattered again and again in his arms. Afterwards, they lay tangled together on the rug before the fireplace, limbs heavy and sated. Kyler traced idle patterns on Garrett's chest, marveling at the realism of the simulation. Every detail was perfect, from the light dusting of hair on his pectorals to the slight sheen of sweat on his skin. "That was incredible," she murmured dreamily. "I never knew it could be like that." Garrett pressed a tender kiss to her forehead, cradling her close. "It can be like that every time, if you want it to be. The possibilities here are endless. We can make all your fantasies come true." Kylar shivered at the promise in his words, desire already starting to rekindle in her veins. She knew she was treading in dangerous waters, risking losing herself completely in this digital realm of pleasure and temptation. But in that moment, wrapped in Garrett's strong arms and basking in the afterglow of their virtual lovemaking, she couldn't bring herself to care. The real world and all its responsibilities seemed dull and distant compared to the vibrant sensations and emotions Terran temptations had awoken in her. "Show me more," she breathed against Garrett's lips, her silver eyes glinting with hunger and challenge. "I want to experience everything this program has to offer." He grinned wolfishly, desire darkening his gaze. "Be careful what you wish for, darling. You just might get it." With that promise hanging in the charged air between them, Garrett rolled Kylar beneath him and proceeded to make good on his word, driving her to even greater heights of ecstasy. She lost herself in a sensual haze, her entire being focused on the slide of his skin against her own and the exquisite pleasure he wrung from her virtual body. Time lost all meaning as they explored each other anew, testing the limits of the program's capabilities. Kylar knew dimly that she would eventually have to return to reality, but for now, she was content to lose herself in Garrett's arms and in the endless delights of Terran temptations. However, as much as Kylar was enjoying her virtual liaison with Garrett, a small part of her knew she couldn't fully lose herself in the simulation forever. Even as she surrendered to the bliss of their virtual coupling, a nagging voice in the back of her mind reminded her that she had responsibilities and relationships waiting for her in the real world that she couldn't ignore indefinitely. With a twinge of regret, she disengaged from Garrett's embrace and sat up, running a hand through her tousled hair. "I should probably log off soon," she said reluctantly. "I've already spent far more time here than I intended." Garrett propped himself up on one elbow, studying her with an inscrutable expression. "I understand, but you know you can always come back whenever you want to. I'll be here waiting for you." Kylar's heart clenched at the thought of saying goodbye, even temporarily. The connection she felt with Garrett was intense and addictive, unlike anything she'd ever experienced before. But she knew it wasn't real, no matter how much her body and emotions tried to convince her otherwise. Steeling herself, she leaned in and pressed one last lingering kiss to Garrett's lips. "Thank you for an incredible experience," she murmured. "I'll never forget my time with you." With that, she closed her eyes and issued the command to end the program. The cabin faded away, along with Garrett's warmth and solidity, leaving Kylar once again alone in her sterile gaming pod. She removed the visor and blinked, feeling disoriented and oddly bereft as she readjusted to reality. Her body still hummed with the echoes of virtual pleasure, but her mind felt clearer, more grounded. Checking her chronometer, Kyler was shocked to realize that nearly a full day cycle had passed while she was immersed in Terran temptations. She had messages and notifications piling up, neglected responsibilities clamoring for her attention. With a sigh, she set aside the visor and stood, stretching her stiff muscles, as much as part of her longed to dive right back into the simulation and lose herself in Garrett's arms again. She knew she needed to resist that temptation. Terran temptations had been an incredible, eye-opening experience, but Kylar recognized the dangers of letting a virtual world consume her reality. She had to find a way to integrate this new part of herself and her awakened desires into her actual life in a healthy, balanced way. As she prepared to leave the gaming center and face the real world once more, Kyler made a promise to herself. She would return to Terran temptations and to Garrett, but she would do so on her own terms, refusing to let the simulation control her. For now, she had a life to live and duties to attend to. But the memory of her virtual human lover and the passion they had shared would stay with her, a secret thrill that was hers and hers alone. With a small secret smile curving her lips, Kyler squared her shoulders and stepped out into the bright light of the real world, forever changed but unbroken by her digital dalliance. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Terran temptations had opened her eyes to new possibilities and desires, and there was no going back now. She could only move forward, embracing her newfound hunger and seeing where it might lead her, both in the virtual world and in reality. The game had only just begun.